Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Harry Brelsford from SMB Nation with the weekly webinar. So a little bit of housekeeping is always up front. We're turning the corner on the rest of the year, so really appreciate your time today in particular because it's just a couple of weeks of productivity left. Your time is important, so we appreciate you attending. A lot going on with StorageCraft. We're going to jump right into that in a moment. Please use the questions capability to ask your questions, and I'll be the moderator to ask that of our panelist, Martin. And then on the housekeeping front, next week we have two webinars coming up, a Tuesday and a Thursday. So we're going to be double dipping next week. I'm going to get the information to you. On Thursday, we have Making Money with IIS Infrastructure as a Service Cloud, a conversation. And on Tuesday, the 13th, we have Stockholm Syndrome and IT tape backup. So join us next week for a double dip on the webinar front. But StorageCraft's been in the news a little bit lately, and we want to jump right into it because they're doing some cool new things, and they're a friend of the family with SMB Nation. So we have Martin Merrill as the presenter. Martin, hello again, sir. And this is, this is a timely webinar. I think you guys are telling some new stories out in the community. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, we're actually real excited about some of the stuff that we've actually just released. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of other goodies that are just waiting to be released coming this next year. But today the topic is protecting your cloud data, and so that's kind of what we're going to be discussing today.
All right, well, let's get going. I see your screen. Let's just jump right into it.
Excellent. Well, that sounds great. Harry, thanks again for the introduction, and we're really grateful for this opportunity to sit down again with SMB Nation and talk about what's happening here at StorageCraft. For those of you that don't know, StorageCraft, we are a manufacturer of backup and disaster recovery software, and we do anything now from image-based backup and restore to a file-based backup. We've got a backup analyzer product now that was released back in October, and just all sorts of great things. But today, just judging by the name of our topic today, do clients really need software as a service application backup to keep their data safe? I could go ahead and just quickly answer that question and we'd be done, but I think it might be a good idea to kind of share some of the reasons behind this particular subject anyway. Of course, my answer is going to be, yeah, we probably do need software as a service application backup to keep our data safe. All right, and this is the subject that we're going to be discussing today. Now, depending on how we go, we may not be filling the entire hour with the content that I'll be discussing today, but I think that what we're going to be addressing is probably very relevant in today's world. To answer this particular question, do clients really need software as a service application backup to keep their data safe? We're going to kind of start answering this question by addressing some famous last words. Yeah, the whole idea behind famous last words, they're usually something that's a little bit ironic. People say something on their deathbed that just happens to be indicative of the way they die, whether they know it or not. Or, there's these little things where it's like, oh, you say something smart, and then the next thing you know, that particular thing bites you in the butt. That's kind of the whole idea behind famous last words. And so, to kind of give us maybe a little introduction, all right, here's some famous last words. Get a load of this. You be good. We'll see you tomorrow. I love you. All right? Nobody ever would have thought that would be, famous last words. And I guess the thing that makes this a little bit interesting is this just happens to be words that were spoken to the handler of a parrot named Alec. His handler, Dr. Irene Pepperberg, put him in his cage for the night, and he was found dead the next morning. Now, this wasn't actually said due to Alex's knowledge of his impending death necessarily, but this is because this is what Alex said to Pepperberg every night before being locked in his cage. I just think it's kind of interesting. I'm trying to put it in parrot sounding, right? You be good. I'll see you tomorrow. I love you. Interesting. Famous last words, right? How about this one? Am I dying? Or is this my birthday? Well, that one's kind of interesting. These are actually words that were said by a gal named Lady Nancy Astor. She was a a very well, I don't know how famous she was necessarily, but she was a socialite. So my guess is she was probably very well known. It just so happened in her final illness, she was bedridden for a good portion of it, and she was known to be in and out of consciousness. And I guess the very last conscious words she said were just this: she had waken up from a coma for a period of time, and she was surprised to see that her family was right there at her bedside. Am I dying, or is this my birthday? All right, famous last words, right? And I'm sure that if we were to sit down, we could find a bunch of other, probably more famous last words that have become so cliche they wouldn't necessarily be interesting. But hey, these are interesting, right? Well, okay, so let's go ahead and talk about why are we even discussing this as a subject, and what exactly are we referring to? Okay, the topic that at hand for today is actually dealing with software as a service vendors. All right, software as a service is something that is becoming more and more prominent in the industry. People have got their data. I mean, honestly, it could be anywhere at this point in time. I mean, we can be most clients, most organizations that I even interact with. They've got a hybrid solution of data that's stored in devices that they keep on site. They've got data that's backed up data that's already kept in some cloud location, and then of course there are these online software providers or these online solution providers where you can actually operate portions of your business. There are applications you can actually run in the cloud, and there your data stays in the cloud. And they're actually providing a fantastic service. But let's go ahead and define software as a service to start things off with. All right, what is software as a service? Well, going ahead and reading this here, the software as a service is a distribution model for software in which a third-party provider hosts applications and then makes those available to your customers over the internet. All right, now can we think of any popular software as a service vendors? Well, I know one, Office 365. Oh, I know another one, Salesforce. Salesforce.com. There's a number of other online services, Box.com, which is happy to keep your data safe and sound. Google offers a number of different services. Google Apps, and I think they might be changing the name of that one here shortly, but Google Apps is another one. These are all solutions that are actually offered that you can run over the internet. Open up a web browser. You're going to connect to the little interface. You can start launching documents, opening spreadsheets. There's forms that can be filled out. Your data is all going to be saved in the cloud. You can access it from anywhere, which is actually really, really nice. But this is what we're talking about. All right, data that's held within these particular, this particular type of setup, this particular environment, it might still be at risk. All right, so this is kind of what we're discussing today. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about software as a service and why it's important and why it's actually becoming something that's more and more prevalent in the industry. First of all, these are actually some notes that aren't necessarily pertinent to the slide, but we'll get there in just a second. First of all, software as a service removes the need for organizations to actually install and run applications on their own computers or in their own data centers. All right, this actually eliminates the need. This actually eliminates the expense of hardware acquisition, hardware provisioning, as well as maintenance, as well as the different licensing that you have to be stuck with, or installation and support. There are also other benefits of software as a service. This would be flexible payments. Rather than purchasing software to install or additional hardware to support it, customers can subscribe to a software as a service offering. Now, generally, they'll pay for this service on a monthly basis using a pay-as-you-go model. And this way, we're going to be able to transition those costs to recurring operating expense, which allows many businesses to actually exercise better and more predictable budgeting. Also, when it comes to software as a service offerings, you can terminate those contracts, or you can terminate the use of those particular services pretty much at any time. And then once that happens, you end up limiting the billing. It's finally done with. All right, so flexibility is something that is definitely offered through these software as a service business models. In addition, you get scalability. Cloud services like Office 365, Salesforce.com offer that. They offer high scalability, which gives their customers the option to access more or fewer services or features on demand. So, the more you do business within a specific software as a service offering, you might pick and choose, cafeteria style, certain pieces that you want. Then as your organization grows, you may need to start taking advantage of additional things. And so it offers some true scalability. Add, remove different services, different features as you need them. And then, of course, there's accessibility. Software as a service applications are served over the internet. And you can consume those services by way of a web browser on pretty much any device. It doesn't matter what you're on. You could be on your phone and access Salesforce.com, right? You could be sitting down on your tablet, with your tablet on the beach, and you can write up a document and actually save it within Office 365. You can get your email through the Exchange server offered through Office 365. You can write your Google Docs, you can store data. All of this is now readily available in all the different devices that anybody is using nowadays. All right, we're no longer tied to our desktop machine. We're no longer tied to having our data stored on some device that we've purchased locally. We've now just essentially, I don't know how you say that, we broke the bonds of being tied down by our data. We can now get it pretty much anywhere we want due to these types of service offerings, right? Well, let's see. There was some other information that I wanted to share. Well, go ahead and take a look at the rest of the slide now. All right. Software as a service offerings and these different models are becoming very, very prevalent. Microsoft alone, with Office 365, as of March of this year, had 60 million commercial seats of Office 365 out there. 60 million. Okay. Now, you're paying a certain amount per seat, and then you look at the revenue that Microsoft is able to generate. This is a huge part of Microsoft's business anymore. And what is it? It's a cloud offering. People are just logging in with their internet browsers and accessing the tools found within Office 365. All right. Now, get a load of this trend. By 2018, we're expecting Microsoft's cloud business to top $20 billion. All right. And that's just Microsoft. Who else is in the online storage or the online data business? Salesforce.com has been doing this for a long, long time. Just imagine the type of revenue and the type of explosive growth they're going to be they're going to be seeing. Amazon Web Services, all right, AWS. Amazon is a huge player in keeping data safe, cloud storage, all that kind of stuff. Pretty soon, I would expect to start seeing applications offered through them. Look at what they're going to be doing. Their business is going to be exploding. You can even look at services like Dropbox, Box.com. These are all services that are very well known. They're used by just about everybody that I know, and I can only imagine that they're going to see and experience and benefit from the same growth that the Microsoft has actually seen as well. So take a look at that. This ain't no small business. This is actually something that everybody should be mindful of, that there's all that data out there because of these services, and these services are going to continue to grow and grow and grow, but that also means that the data that's in these services will also continue to grow. And now you need to ask yourself, well, am I going to be able to always get at the data that I need within these services? Is it always going to be there? The answer is, you know what? Maybe not. And this is the question that we need to raise and discuss today. When it comes to software as a service, there are a couple things that we need to know. Take a look at this little blurb here. This is actually information that came directly from Gartner. Listen to what it says here. Some organizations may not realize that software as a service providers' high availability and disaster recovery capabilities could fall short in preventing data loss triggered by user errors, data corruption, or malicious attacks. So Gartner, they're not necessarily praising the software as a service, although I think it's a fantastic option. But Gartner is actually noticing, it's interesting. These software as a service companies, as great as they may be, their disaster recovery capabilities may not actually be adequate when it comes to actually giving you the data that you need when you need it. Interesting. This is a finding from Gartner, right? Industry expert in this type of thing. How about this? Due to the high cost of maintaining backup infrastructure for long-term retention, software as a service providers may choose to offer basic or backup and disaster recovery functions with limited retention. All right. So they're even coming right out and saying that these particular services may not even back up as robustly as you might actually hope so. It might just be very, very basic backup. Now granted, these software as a service providers are going to need to they're going to have to adhere by their own set of SLAs, and I'm sure they're going to be legally held accountable for, making sure they protect your data the very best they can. But so long as they're meeting those SLAs, if there just happens to be data that is lost, within the framework of that SLA, that data is lost. All right. Do you have a secondary method of being able to recapture that data? All right. Good question to ask. So we also have some very common misconceptions about software as a service offerings. And this is where we are going to start asking some, well, not necessarily asking some additional questions, but we're going to go ahead and switch our conversation now back to some famous last words that you may hear in the industry. And because they are focused on software as a service, we are going to call them famous SaaS words. All right. The first famous SaaS words. This is something your IT guy might say because he's confident in the online solution that he's currently working with. Since my data is already in the cloud, it's already backed up and safe. All right. Is that true? Well, you know what? To a point, it probably is.
No.
Actually, that's right. Isn't that right, Harry? It isn't entirely true.
That's right.
I mean, we'll give them the credit where it's due. All right. Most data in the cloud does provide protection against floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, those types of natural disasters that that can take your actual hardware and destroy it if it's on site. So having it in the cloud, you definitely have some safety there to a point. But what happens when there are user or system errors? What happens when critical data is deleted or overwritten? What happens when you need to recover some data in the proper format? All right, take a look at that final blurb there. If it's corrupted or if it's difficult or impossible to access, having it in the cloud doesn't really mean anything now, does it? All right? Are you going to be guarded against that? Are the protections that are being put in place by those software as a service vendors, are they going to be enough to make sure that your data is there for you? All right? They're obligated to a point, but once they've done their job, is there any real guarantee there? Well, maybe not. All right? So since your data is in the cloud, yes, there's a degree of safety, but it's not 100% safe, and you may want to consider having a secondary means of being able to grab that data back when you need it. Now, again, none of this particular webinar or none of this message that I'm sharing is actually a knock against cloud services. Software as a service offerings, they're actually a wonderful thing. All I'm just suggesting here is, okay, we're asking ourselves these questions. Are we getting the answer that we're really hoping for, or do we need to, consider, other ways to make sure our data is completely safe? All right, next famous SaaS words. Here we go. Your IT guy walks in. He stretches his arms. He's got this nice gloaty face on. He says, "We have good, highly trained admins and users and very efficient systems." All right, and you know what? That's probably very true. Any organization out there is going to pride themselves on having the best and brightest available when it comes to the people that are taking charge of their data. It'd be very, very, not very wise otherwise, right? But it just so happens that no matter how well you hire, train, or manage your personnel, anybody can make a mistake. Most data losses are actually caused by human error. And honestly, everybody makes mistakes. Other user interaction problems may happen when the systems management team or the systems themselves create data losses through sync errors, corrupted files, or even overwriting good data with bad. Because you know what? Sometimes that happens. And if the data that's found within those cloud service offerings are not being backed up, and you overwrite that data, well, you've just overwritten some data that was there. And if there's no way to go back to a different version of that particular file, that change may end up being permanent. Okay, and there's really not much you can do at that point, right? So there we go. Application vendors do not offer protection to actually cover these types of circumstances. Okay, so no matter how well you train, no matter how well you hire, people are human. Human beings make mistakes, and you kind of have to just accept that and do what you can to mitigate against those different options or those different problems. How about this one? All right, here comes your IT guy, and he's asked why he's not backing up his online software as a service data. He says, well, if we need something, we just put in a request to the application vendor. All right. Well, Microsoft, Google, and other productivity app vendors can't or won't always be able to get that data back. Most of them only offer broad data backup and recovery options designated to meet their basic application services. So that when data is provided, it's not usually timely, complete, or even in the right format. In fact, the Microsoft EULA, the EULA for Microsoft 365 protects them from the loss of up to 10% of user data. So when you look at the SLA, the actual agreement that Microsoft puts out, they have managed to protect themselves against the loss of up to 10% of your data. You may not even be able to get the data back. So your IT guy can come here and say, yeah, if I need something, we'll just request it from the SaaS vendor. When the reality is that's fine, but what if they don't have it? Because it's very likely they may not. And even if they do, how easy is it going to be to get it? And if you get it, will it be in a usable format? All right? Is it going to come in the form of an actual Word document you can actually read through, or will they find the raw data and they're going to expect you to find a way to convert it into something you can use? That's the type of question you got. Go ahead.
Well, I can add I don't know if it's famous last words, an analogy, a parable, a fable, but I can do a little bit of storytelling here. That I've had the pleasure of assisting a firm recently in the big data area, and it's a SaaS-based predictive analytics tool. And when we got a file from them, it was, I think, 10 million IP addresses, and it came as a CSV file. Did you know, I mean, this is close to your storytelling, but, did you know Excel, even the new Excel, only goes up to just over 1 million rows? So it's like, man, I can't even open it.
Open it.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, do I got to go? Well, what was that database that used to come with the full Microsoft Office? Not SQL, but the baby.
It was Access, Microsoft Access.
Thank
right?
you, sir. Yeah. So, do I got to go install Access? I mean, really?
Yeah, exactly.
So I just couldn't resist telling a real world story because, guys, these things will come out of left field. The data format and can you read it? And again, I understand the context is slightly different here, but I'll go back on mute.
No, very good. To my point, that you make a great point. You kind of strengthen what it is I'm trying to say, Harry. So I actually appreciate that. Just remember, yes, you can put in a request to get the data back, but is it going to be what you actually need, if it's even there at all? Right? Great famous SaaS word. Hopefully, it's not going to be too ironic for you or for that IT guy that actually sent it or said it. Right? Okay. Next one. How about this? Nobody would ever want to hijack my data. We're too small to be a target. We're too small. Nobody cares about my data. So why would I be a target for, say, a ransomware attack, or be a target for anything? Nobody wants my data at all. Well, the threat of data lockout and ransom has actually gained attention against even small targets, like small to medium business clients, local hospitals, even small state and local government departments. All of these can be infected. They can all be compromised. These organizations have made the decision, well, not all of them, but a lot of these organizations actually have made the decision to pay rather than lose that critical data or erode their organization's safety and credibility. But quite honestly, why pay at all? Why not just take a few extra steps, get yourself involved with the service that's going to help add that extra layer of protection, as well as the ability to restore the data that may end up getting corrupted or encrypted or whatever it is that you might be subjected to. I mean, why pay? If you're going to be paying anyway, why not pay even a smaller amount and invest in something that's going to protect your data from the get-go anyway, right? Get a little of that little final blurb there. Ransomware attacks, they're indiscriminate and they're on the rise. Organizations large and small are at risk, all right? You know what that actually means? That means Microsoft. It's a large organization. What if somebody hacks the Microsoft Office 365 service, and finds a way to corrupt that data? If you have it backed up, of course, you're not going to be subjected to it. Now, of course, that is unlikely. This is Microsoft, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily an impossibility. Our data is everywhere. Our data can also oftentimes be incredibly critical, and we need to make sure that we're we're taking these types of threats seriously, whether it's going to happen or not. It's always best to just protect ourselves, and you can look at it as a form of insurance. And by the way, ransomware, I actually did a ransomware webinar not too long ago, and I can actually count. Nobody really cares about my data. Yeah, but I was infected by ransomware, my personal data. Now, luckily enough, I had my stuff backed up, but you never know. You can protect yourself, and you never really know what's going to happen. Okay, other famous SaaS words. How about this one? Our people are our people are careful and would only throw away incorrect or outdated files. This kind of goes back to that original one, or that one previously, where saying, yeah, we always hire the best and our people are well trained. Well, it's kind of along the same lines. Our people are careful. Well, let's go back to that. Anybody can make a mistake and accidentally corrupt or even get rid of important data. Users are often panicked, going through their trash folders, looking for something they accidentally changed or deleted. Now, imagine how much worse it would be to realize that those files that were once in the trash are now permanently gone. All right? Now, to that particular point, take a look at that little blurb that just showed up. Large software as a service application providers delete trashed items regularly. All right, think of that for a minute. Okay, so, locally, it's bad enough. If we find ourselves in a situation where we accidentally took, a very important document, we threw it in the trash because we thought we had a duplicate or whatever the reason is, oftentimes we can go into our little trash bin on our Windows 10 machine and be able to restore it. But oftentimes we'll also go in there and we'll just go ahead and clear out and purge out that recycle bin, right? And when that happens, the data's gone. Okay, well, you're in control at home over all of that, but if your data is in the cloud, you still have the option to delete old files, old documents that you don't need anymore, delete data and update it from a spreadsheet and all of that. Well, let's say you do that accidentally, you've deleted the file. Now, of course, you'll have a little bit of a threshold, a little time frame that you'll be able to go back and restore that data, but you know what? The online service isn't going to keep your data forever in that kind of a scenario. Yeah, they'll have access to that trash data for a small period of time, but at some point that's going to be gone. What if you realize when it's just a little bit too late that you shouldn't have deleted that file, and by that time the data is no longer there?
Yeah, Martin,
those are the kind of questions you got to ask. Go ahead.
Well, if the walls could talk, I mean, let me tell you, I've experienced this a couple of different times. A forum community that I was participating until they basically shut it down. And they had this whole song and dance about shutting it down, and fake news and spying and hacking and blah blah blah. Suffice it to say, I mean, it wasn't where I'd spend a great deal of time battling political stuff and all that. But point is this: they had a button to export your contributions. I said, fine. Click the button and I get a CSV file, a zip file, and it had information about some subgroups I had joined and that kind of thing, but it actually didn't have my content, right? It actually didn't have my contributions, and so I've experienced that firsthand. And again, this was all fun and giggles. But you don't know what you're going to be able to get back out of these SaaS environments, man.
You don't know what it's always going to be. I mean, again, as great as a service that these are, you really just never know. So taking that extra step, having a little bit of forethought to make sure that data is protected, is always a good idea. So again, yeah, great example. Thanks, Harry. I actually appreciate that. Okay, moving forward, are there more famous SaaS words?
Martin,
yes.
if you don't mind, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping, my friend, because we're at the bottom of the hour. So for those of you that joined late, we're hearing from StorageCraft today, and they're doing a lot of stuff lately. So we're going to continue to talk about that and keep an eye on them over the next few months. And we're having a SaaS backup conversation with some Office 365 isms sprinkled in today. Be sure to use the question feature in your control panel to ask your questions. And then once again, a reminder, next Tuesday, we have a double dip next Tuesday for webinars. Tuesday the 13th, Stockholm Syndrome and IT, and Thursday the 15th, Making and Saving Money with IaaS Cloud. All right, Martin, let's continue.
All right, very, very good. Okay, so next, famous SaaS words. All right, here comes your IT guy, and he's asked, all right, what about our cloud cloud service offering that they're dealing with. It comes back and says, well, we can get what we need when we need it and in the original format. All right? Not necessarily true. I mean, although he probably can get, for the most part, the information that he needs. Not necessarily always when you need it, and not necessarily in the original format. We've actually kind of already addressed this, right? Another thing I want to bring up about all of this, oftentimes changes are made. Users will often update their computers, and these computers are already set up with very specific settings that may integrate with that particular online service, and they may find that they have to rebuild all their structures in scenarios where they've actually had to do these kinds of updates. They got to, rebuild their structures, labels, settings. It's also the same for organizations in general, as well as the structures of their data. So data recovered after some time from a software as a service application vendor can actually be returned in a flat file or other non-formatted files or folders. So, again, you can request the data, but it may not be in the format that you need, and you may not be able to use it unless you find some way to convert it first, right? So when your IT guy says we can get it and to get it in the original format, again, not all the time. As long as the original format has not been modified, a backup and recovery solution can restore user data exactly the way that it was originally, right? So if you've got some other third-party software as a service backup solution in place, oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, you actually can get the data back the way that you need to. All right, and in situations like that, of course, the users don't have to waste that painstaking time to recreate the functions and the settings, and everything found within the format of their data. So, yeah, that's definitely something that we need to take a look at. So all of these things that I have just gone through, these are all, what could be structured as famous last words in regards to software as a service. All right. So I'll tell you what, rather than us just sitting here and making statements like that so that ironically we can be proven wrong at some point in time, let's go ahead and identify what the actual need is here that we're addressing. Okay, cloud-based applications, they do already exist in the cloud, but the vendors themselves cannot always guarantee that a user's data will be available when it's needed and in the proper format. All right, these vendors, they do provide a basic level of platform protection, but these backups are designed to meet their specific requirements and not necessarily those of the end users. Now, again, this statement here from Gartner, software as a service backup tools for additional recovery flexibility and automation as the native capabilities could be insufficient to protect a business's special needs. Again, they're backups that are provided by these software as a service vendors are not necessarily always adequate for the actual client's needs. All right? Again, famous SaaS words, I can get my data whenever I want to. Well, not necessarily. Well, my data is always protected in the cloud. Well, no, your users could definitely do some things that are wrong. Do we have that data saved in a format that I can recover from sometime in the future? All right? That's the need. What's the solution? Martin, what's the solution? Well, compared to software as a service native backup functions, third-party tools may offer the following flexibility. Let's go ahead and talk about some of those flexibilities, okay? And what we're talking about here is secondary backup of your online data. That's really all we're talking about here, is saying, okay, we've got a great service in Office 365. We've got a great service in Salesforce, all right? They're doing a wonderful thing for me. They're helping me to run my company, all right? But I've got critical data in there. I've got data that I can't afford to lose, and I don't want to subject my data to the probably less than adequate backup practices that I really need. So what do? Let's take a look at third-party offerings. All right. Again, there are cloud-based backup applications that exist, and being able to take advantage of them are going to provide the following benefits. First of all, backup frequency. All right. So these tools can create backup on demand, or you can schedule backups based on customers' needs. Some could even back up several times a day to reduce the data loss window. These online services, sure, if they do offer a backup solution, it might be 1 or 2 snapshots a day. With their own third-party backup option, you can modify that to as many backups as you think is adequate to make sure that you get the data that you need backed up, right? How about this one? Wider backup coverage. All right? Now, some of these third-party solutions may be able to back up more items for more complete protection. Or they might even have the capability to set up a more advanced backup policy. All right. So, not only will you be backing up the data, but maybe you can pick and choose the critical data and make sure that gets backed up more frequently. Maybe you can say, I only need this specific data. We'll let Microsoft do its own regular backup, but I need more backup for this particular set of data, and I'll set that up in whatever it is my third-party backup application is going to be. But you see, here's the deal. It allows you to be able to have that wider backup coverage, and you can be much, much more specific. How about this? Backup location. All right. A lot of these third-party vendors will take their backup data and send it to another very well-known or very secure cloud, so that again you can still access it wherever you want to, but it's no longer just locked up within that vendor's environment. Many of these will actually send their backup data, like I said, to another public cloud provider, and a few may actually allow users to store their backup data on their own premises. Now, what I'm alluding to here, and what we're going to actually end up with by the time I finish my little message here, StorageCraft has just released our own cloud backup solution, which is addressing these exact needs. And we really love the opportunity to chat with every one of you here about what it is that we have to offer. And we actually, just so that you know, we actually will back up to Amazon's cloud service. All right, so we take that data from Microsoft Office 365, and that's where we're going to be storing it. So again, but we have the ability, you actually have the ability to also define a means of being able to take that data and store it locally as well. What else? What other flexibility do we have by using third-party online backup tools? First, more restore options. These third-party tools, they may offer in-place restore, or even out-of-place restore with no overrides, or they may restore to a different location and restore selected versions. They also tend to have more conflict resolution choices as well. In addition to override, they may be able to skip, merge, or append to other restores that they may have done in the past. How about this? Backup retention. Instead of a fixed number of days, such as 14 or 30, which is actually pretty standard, you're not going to get many more days worth of backups in a lot of these online software as a service organizations. Through these third-party tools, we could actually allow customers to set up their own retention based on their own specific business needs. All right, so that's something that I hadn't mentioned before, but the backup retention policy for a lot of these online services, and again, let's use Office 365 as an example. I mean, we're looking at maybe 14 days is the amount of time they will keep their data backed up. Anything longer than that, you're kind of out of luck, right? And then finally, faster self-service restore or recovery, right? We go back to that famous last words that I saw before, where it says, if I need something, I'll just put in a request. Well, that's great, again, but how long is it going to take for you to get that data? All right? If you could just do it yourself because you've backed it up, you have access to that data, and you can just grab it yourself, how much faster is that going to be than waiting for Microsoft to actually get in gear and find the data that you need and then send it to you? Oh, and by the way, if it's done correctly with an integrated platform that's communicating through the appropriate APIs, that data is going to be in the right format. So all you got to do is say, yeah, I need this file that was accidentally deleted, a week ago. I can go ahead and find it and grab it. It'll be in the right format, and I did it all on my own without the intervention of the online vendor. And oh, look at this, it only took me 30 seconds. That's the kind of flexibility and value that we can really offer with a cloud-based backup, with a cloud backup solution, right? Oh, there is one more here. Also, you can have additional administrative functions. Third-party tools may provide additional administrative capabilities, such as permissions management, enforcement on security policies and configuration policies, as well as auditing and reporting functions. We can actually get some very fine-tuned information for you to be able to look at and identify, trends and those types of things that can help you make decisions on what continues to be backed up, what doesn't moving forward. All right. So that's our solution. The need is the ability to back up the data. And as far as StorageCraft is concerned, I've already alluded to this, and now comes the shameful plug from StorageCraft ourselves to take a look at StorageCraft Cloud Backup. All right. If you already have somebody that you can chat with, one of your local representatives, if you've ever dealt with StorageCraft in the past, anybody here is going to be happy to sit back and chat with you about what it is that we're actually offering and how it's implemented. We currently released StorageCraft Cloud Backup just a week ago, and we're already finding all sorts of interest. In fact, a number of our partners have signed on. We've already got quotes out for thousands of seats to get going. So we're definitely seeing that this is potentially a very trend-setting opportunity that we have, and hopefully you would be able and willing to get on board as well. If you need more information, go ahead and check us out. We've got a little URL right here. Go to www.storagecraft.com/products/cloud-backup, and you can learn more. And then, of course, if you need additional information, go ahead and send us emails, information requests, and we'll be sure to get one of our channel account managers or territory account managers reaching out to you to give you some more information. But with that, I'm done. And I feel like I've said a mouthful, but I'm certainly happy to stick around and answer additional questions if you got them.
Yep. Hang on. Let me kind of put them in order here. Folks, be sure also to use the questions feature on the control panel to ask more questions. Let's start with this one. I'm going to pick this one. Where is my data stored?
Okay. Yeah, so I did get to that. We actually are storing in Amazon Web Services, AWS, right now. That is where all of our backup data is being stored.
Yeah, and forgive me, by the way, the questions have accumulated, and I'm just going to take, for our own edification, if there's a little bit of repetition here, forgive me.
That's no problem.
So let's take this fourth one. Does StorageCraft Cloud to Cloud protect public folders in Office 365? A gentleman's asking that.
Great question, and the answer is yes. We are going to protect those public folders. So really, anything that is being stored, either on a user or company level, we're going to be able to capture and save that data, including public folders.
Okay, we have a lady who's asked, how is the backup data protected?
So the data is actually encrypted both at rest and in transit. So when we take the data and we're copying it over into the StorageCraft Cloud Backup service, we are encrypting the data, and then of course once it is finally saved within the AWS data center, it remains encrypted. So we make it very, very difficult for that data to be compromised.
Okay, let me take this one. A gentleman asked, what happens if I change a password to one of the applications I'm backing up?
Yeah, good question, but honestly, that's not really an issue. If you do change your password, the rest of your user credentials, the rest of your account information still remains the same. The only thing you've done is change your password. That changes nothing about the data or the way we back it up. So change your password. Keep your account protected. We'll keep the data protected.
Okay, and I think I have one more here. What are the standard backup practices of SaaS application vendors? The lady asked that again.
Yeah, good question, and they differ depending on on who it actually is. And I'm not sure that I've got all the details, but I did highlight that when it comes right down to it, they are going to back up based on what their own SLAs are, and most of them are only going to be having a retention policy of anywhere from 15 to 30 days, and that's it, with really no options to change that. So they'll usually snapshot. To my understanding, they'll usually snapshot once or twice a day. The data that they've got, and then they're only going to keep those snapshots for a period of 14 days. And I think 14 days is actually the more prevalent retention policy, where there are some that might go as long as 30 days.
Okay, I think we have we've gone through the questions that we have today. So, folks, thank you so much for attending. Again, I know time is literally money this time of year. I mean, Martin, we're getting down to where you can almost count on both hands the remaining number of working days. I mean, seriously, true working days. Come on now, and that remain. And a lot of us have goals to hit, report card goals. A couple of things I would say as we turn the corner on this year. Any way you slice it, if you're watching CNBC or you read MarketWatch or some of the various financial, avenues, Martin, there's some momentum going into 17. Far be it from me to speculate where all this economic momentum is coming from, and many a wise man has gone to his grave trying to time markets, but there does seem to be some momentum, and you know so onward and upward, and a rising tide raises all ships, including storage crafts. So there you are.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, let's see if we can continue to raise the storage craft ship. I like that idea.
Yeah. Well, thanks again,
but
Martin. Thanks again, Storage Craft. And hey, everybody, Tuesday, Thursday webinar, stand by. You'll get announcements on those. Next week's a double dip, and we'll see you then. Have a great day and get back to work.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.